They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You can play any and every position. From coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh, my goodness. Let's see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today. Yeah.
I mix what I like. Everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like. Well, everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like. Sunshine. But everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like.
Yes. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here, Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host and to be back with you. What's up? Welcome. Come on in. Hope you're having a good, what is over here, sunny, beautiful day on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic region of just outside the DMV. But shout out to everybody who's able to join us here live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, DJ Ruckus as a new member. Yipper, Joe Nathan, what's going on? Chitty Matcha. Welcome, everybody. Come on and invite others to join you. As your doctor says, tell a friend that it's on again. And we are back at it. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, join if you can. All the various ways you can support the platform, support blackpowermedia.org, all of that good stuff. So, all right, without further ado, a lot going on. Please, again, make sure you have the bell rung so you don't miss all the things happening here that have happened yesterday, that are happening tomorrow, happening later tonight, everything. Just you don't want to miss anything. The best way just to have the bell rung and you're always good. All right. But without further ado, very much fortunate and looking forward to this next conversation with somebody who I've actually never had the pleasure of interviewing solo, that is. Already in the show description is the previous visit of our guest as a member, as part of our special series, Soldier Stories, where we spoke with him, Kamau and Kalanji, about his time in the BLA. And beyond. But today we're going to focus specifically on the issue of anarchism, Black anarchism, and its relevance to Black liberation and beyond. And of course, I'm talking about that with our guest, Ashanti Alston, who, among many other things, is an anarchist activist, speaker, writer, and former member of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army. From 1974 to 1975, he spent time in prison for a bank robbery, which caused him to become further engaged in politics. He is currently on the steering committee of the Jericho movement to free what is referred to by them and us as political prisoners. And we welcome Ashanti Alston back to the platform once again. Greetings to you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. And to the audience and you, all power to the people.
Right on. So again, I do want to direct everybody back to the other, which is also in the show description. Again, the Soldier Stories discussion we had with you for more about that work and that life, which I'm always happy to have you back on to talk more about at some point. And also goes, I think, more into your own personal story and biography. But today I did kind of want to just skip ahead a little bit and talk more specifically about anarchism. However, that said, I do want to take one quick detour because in trying to prepare for today and going back and reading some of your work on this, there are two names that come up and came up again in reading that work that I do at least want to invite you to say a word or two about, as much as a little as you like. And of course, we can always come back to talk about them as well. One, of course, is Sophia Bukhari, and the other is Kwesi Balagoon, the warlord born on Sunday. And I just, you have a personal and long political comradeship with both, and they're very important people we don't talk and hear enough about. But I just wanted to start there before we went any farther. If you would, say what you would want to about either and both of them.
Sure. Let me start off with Safia. Coming into the Black Panther Party in Plainfield, New Jersey, we had started a chapter, and so there was always this relationship with Newark, Jersey City, and then the Harlem office of the Black Panther Party. At some point, Safia was pretty much in charge of the Harlem office. So in the back and forth, we get to know Safia, and pretty much fall up under her guidance because of her role in that chapter. And that Harlem chapter at the time, this is after the split, was almost like the center chapter for even international folks. Sometimes you're sitting in the office or you're doing work around the office. Here comes some Japanese activists coming through, or some activists from the motherland and stuff like that, and they make sure that they come to the Harlem office. At some point in the relationship, and it's just a comrade relationship, she approaches me and asks me if I would become a part of a cell in the Black Liberation Army with a specific mission to help liberate some political prisoners. And I said, well, let me think about it. And so I come back a week later. I'm like, I'm down, and I'm bringing a comrade with me. So even at that point, I clearly understood her role as that link between the above ground community organizing and other things that the Black Panther Party chapters did in the community, and the more secretive underground. And from there, I'm kind of directed to meet other folks, and then starts my process as, in the beginning, still above ground Panther, but transitioning into the ranks of the Black Liberation Army. At some point, our unit takes off to do what we was assigned to do, which led up to trying to help liberate political prisoners out of the Tombs, Manhattan House of Detention. Though we wasn't successful, we were able to get away, and that's a long story itself. But
I do want to direct people to hear that story in that video, because you did share at least some of it in the Soldier Stories joint. It's powerful, so please, I want people to go check that out. But sorry, please continue.
So at some point we're moving, and then during the course of a bank expropriation in New Haven, Connecticut, shootout, everything. 3 of our comrades were captured there, and the rest were able to get away. But then with the convictions, state and federal court, we were sentenced to different sentences, from 5 to 25 years to 20 year sentences and stuff like that. During the time that I'm incarcerated, though, she and her crew, we find out that she's now underground and a part of another cell of the BLA. And there's an incident in Virginia where her and other comrades were fired upon, kind of out of the blue, by the father and son of this store. Whatever he went through his mind when he seen these Black folks walking into his store. one of our comrades was killed, and Safia and Masai Ehehosi was captured. And Masai was shot in the face and back, you know. And then so here's two more comrades who are now sentenced. During the years, you know, like we're all trying to stay in touch, work on getting out of these prisons and all like that. But then at some point, me and Safia's letters started to get a bit more intimate, you know, and found ourselves writing each other more. After her escape attempt and then recapture, and then eventually when she got out, you know, she back in New York. And at some point, a few years later, my own parole is starting to come up. A year before I got out, we actually ended up getting married in the prison. And then a year later, then I'm out. And that's kind of how we got together, you know, and it was all from, you know, that initial meeting as comrades and the closeness that happens when comrades are working under certain conditions, sometimes tense conditions, you know, brings out feelings. And when we both decided that we wanted to get married, like, okay, I was not even the marrying type. I somehow it came out my mouth, you know. And then I'm out. So I'm back in Harlem at first. I'm in Connecticut. New York won't let me come back in. My lawyer at the time had to do other things to get New York to allow me back in. And during the several months that I was in that period, I actually lived with my lawyer and his family, who, by the way, was one of the lawyers of Bobby Seale and Erica Huggins' New Haven legal team when the state was trying to frame them on what happened to Alex Rackley. So I'm back in New York, and then, you know, now we're living together. She had a daughter, Wanda, who became my daughter. And but one of the things I'll say about that, and I want to say it only because I think it's important for people to get, when two people's lives come together, their stories come together too, which also means the trauma and the pain and other things that come. So sometimes it's not enough for just the dreams of freedom, the dreams of struggle that's going to hold you together. Sometimes you got to deal with them other things. And both me and her had issues that we was interfering with our relationship being able to go forward. So at some point, you know, we separated, but we still maintain a relationship, and especially around Wanda. But one of the things that is so amazing about Safi is that when she got out of prison, she hit the road running. She didn't give herself no time to like recuperate everything, right into political prisoner work, you know, and then her involvement with the Republic of New Africa. She was just like energetic without didn't seem like anything would slow her down. So coming out, I did a lot of work with her around political prisoners, and somewhat, I'm not a citizen of the Republic of New Africa, somewhat with the Republic too, because of our closeness. There was times where I was a bodyguard for President Mario Badelli, you know, but I also meet a lot of comrades who were both above and under for the Republic of New Africa. But at some point, you know, in our separation, I moved to Brooklyn, but we still maintain a relationship, a comrade relationship. And I always noticed that just because of who she was and being a woman, there was many people that was really inspired by her, especially other sisters, you know, in the struggle, you know, that to see Safia in this position, getting up speaking, you know, or helping to put some kind of organization together or some kind of work around a specific political prisoners, the New York Three, you know, whoever it was, she was like a light for many people, you know. And I appreciated that. She got sick at some point, and I think it kind of caught us all by surprise when I got that call from the sister that she just died in the hospital. You know, unexpected, way too early, so much to give, you know, stuff like that. But her Wanda carried on. I mean, Wanda was stepped up, you know, to try to carry on a lot of this political prisoner work, especially. And then until Wanda had her own health issues and stuff like that, and she passed at the age of 45, you know. But Safia was tireless, and like all of us, you know, not perfect, myself included, not perfect, but tireless in her commitment, man. Just tireless and understood, like, this struggle has to be on many different levels. Understood it, you know. So I'm honored, you know, to have had that relationship, had gotten to know her on those different levels, you know.
No, thank you for that. And I for the life of me, I can't get the pronunciation right, so I apologize for that. I keep the emphasis, Safia. I got to stop saying it incorrectly, so I apologize and thank you for the correction on that as well. So Brother Balagoon too, because again, in reading your work to try to prepare for today, the name kept coming up, and it's again a name that we don't talk enough about, and I think should be lifted up. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to have you just say a few words about this warrior born on Sunday.
Warrior born, yes. Well, the thing with Kwesi was that I never even met Kwesi in person.
Wow.
I just knew about Kwesi. I knew who he was and the stories that floated around, which is how I got to know other folks, whether Panthers or BLA. Like I was listening to you with Daruba talking about that Dear Mama stuff. Daruba was just putting out so much information, man. So a lot of the information he even put out, like, oh, I didn't know that. Really, that happened, and which is why it's so important that Daruba got to get a book out of something. He's got to get, because
there's a couple of things.
To know.
Yeah. There's a few things actually in the process right now. So yeah, we got Brother Orasami Burton's book coming.
Yes,
we got Daruba's got his own project. We got another thing of transcripts of interviews. There's a number of things in the work. So, but you're right about that. Anyway, yeah.
So we had all heard stories about Kwesi, like especially if you in that New York, New Jersey area, and I knew Ali Bey Hassan, and there was a brother named Nine, one of Kwesi's close comrades. It just, you get these stories about how one might get locked up somewhere for something, and the others, Nine or whatever, whoever, somehow make their way over there and get them out. You know, there've been so many. I mean, sometimes we hear about prison breakouts or liberations, and it seemed like they might fail. But there's many that was just, you just get them, work it out, figure it out. And Kwesi had stories like that around him, and other folks that was close around him who were BLA folks, and they knew each other. They grew up together and all other kind of stuff. So those were the original stories that you heard. This is, not anything yet about anarchism and all like that. I really didn't get the anarchism till I'm sitting in Lewisburg prison, and as BLA and as us trying to kind of recuperate inside the different prisons, I began to learn more about Kwesi and his politics. But it's interesting too, because we had worked out ways to have sort of underground communications, because we had this thing that was called consolidation. We're trying to consolidate from our losses and everything, regardless, with the folks who are still outside and those of us who was in different prisons. And I come to discover that Kwesi was not among the captured at the time, but was letting folks know that he's out there with others and still able to put themselves in a position to help different captured comrades. And at the time, I'm in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, and I know that we was constantly on efforts to get out of there. They had high walls and everything. And man, we'd be training and we'd be like, oh, we're going to have to scale them walls, or we're going to have to try to dig a tunnel under. We're going to commandeer one of them vans coming up, them trucks. Every day was an at-war feeling, at war. And Daruba talks about that. You know, it's like our attitude was still, we're at war. We just captured. That don't mean it's over. You just captured. So let's figure out how to be getting out of here. And even Kwesi had sent word to us in Lewisburg, like, comrades in Philly and other places, what do you need? You know? And that was on that level. But he was also trying to develop, for folks coming out, ways to stay in touch that did not rely on a small group of individuals who was like in control. I think us coming out of that split experience, no one wanted a situation again where Huey P. Newton and his clique they have total control over what's going on, total control of the resources, the ideological thinking is going out, whatever. And so Kwesi was really clear on, like, we had to develop more autonomous units, but with strong, specific ways to stay in touch and communicate. That's what started me to thinking how he was this anarchist. I'm still Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, but I'm also reading a lot of critical theory. I'm also starting to read more feminist stuff, and just kind of getting into the anarchist, but still thinking, too idealistic, you know. But on a movement basis, he was already laying out some things that could be considered more anti-authoritarian, anarchistic. How it would eventually panned out, who knows? But with him and a few other comrades who was really critical of that Marxist-Leninist top-down hierarchy, had me move more into my curiosity. So I started reading more. Later on, things happened at Lewisburg. I get shipped to Marion, Illinois, which took the place of Alcatraz, me and another comrade. There, I met a few other comrades who was clearly anti-authoritarian. And literature, even in Marion, was coming in from Canada and other places. There was this anarchistic material from anarchist groups. And it started to clear up for me some of the confusions I had around the idealism of this anarchist stuff. That it could work, from the day-to-day organizing to the larger dreaming period in terms of a society without a state, and getting real specific with it, you know. And even so, that's when some of the writings of Martin Sostry comes in, and then some of the few things that Kwesi might have had published that was even critiquing Panthers and the broader Black nationalist movement. And it started to make sense. I did not want to be a part of anything that was going to reproduce another Huey P. Newton situation. This is why when you start to listen to Daruba specifically, Man, you can see that he's not the type. Sometimes you see the writings that are coming through. At some point, I began to pick up, I think this is Garuba writing this, because it was a critique of that whole hierarchy in the Black Panther Party, but the pointing us in some other directions to be able to move in a different way. And others who had directly experienced some of the bullshit that was going on in Oakland, you didn't want to repeat it. And I definitely didn't. Kwesi was already there, you know? So it's like searching out ways to communicate with either his writings or with him. You know, that was my desire.
So, but let me ask you this though. You know, when you mentioned Daruba, if so, Daruba talks often about the how close they seem to have gotten to democratizing the Central Committee, which would have maybe dealt with this issue that you're talking about with Huey as this. See, if that had been able to occur, if we could just speculate for a moment, could that have been a check and balance that might have I don't want to say prevented you from going to anarchism, because I don't mean to frame it that way, but would that have been, would that have maybe eased some of this tension you rightfully had with the singular power source, with the monopolization of power, monopoly of power?
Yeah, I think it would have helped. I think it would have helped. Now remember, I am rank and file.
Right.
And I say that in the sense like I was not one of the top thinkers and all that. Rank and file. We just had a memorial for blood, Thomas McCrary, in at the Schoenberg in New York, and mostly everyone there, the comrades that showed up, rank and file. You know, so I say that in the sense like, you know, we did the readings we were supposed to read. We had the political education classes and all that to keep developing, you know, our own abilities to read the situations we were in from a historical perspective and others. But I think I wouldn't have seen a lot of that beforehand, like the time that we had just joined the Panther Party, or the time that just before the split, or just after the split. But it was the split that helped me to see that this thing with this clique of leaders up top doing the damage that they were doing, I wouldn't want to return to that. So I did find out about later on. I did find out there was this effort to democratize. Would it have helped? I think so. Would it have included enough women? I doubt it. You know, Fred Hampton. You know, okay. Who else would Zaid Shakur have gotten in there? But what women more women would have needed to get in there? So, but that's the things that I was beginning to see when I'm reading the feminisms and stuff. I'm like, even in our local chapter, man, we was pretty sexist. We had the language that we knew that we were supposed to, even from the Panther Party, fight sexism. But what did we really know how to do that? You know, you can't just say to the cadre, you know, now we're anti-sexist, but there's no process in place to help us see how our actions, our words, our positionings also contribute to that very male structure. And, you know, even the underground can be a very maleist structure, you know. So I know at this point in Lewisburg and in Marion, and then later on in Lompoc, I am clear that it would have had to go further than democratizing a hierarchy. I mean, how do you do it anyhow?
So,
you know?
But that's exactly what leads me to. So I have always struggled with what I thought I've understood about anarchy and anarchism, and I'm only in the last maybe year or two really trying to learn more. One of the problems that I had, you've talked about in your writings, is this association with whiteness that was, you know, sort of like a hurdle to get over. the popular presentation of the idea of anarchism or anarchy is often totally foreign to how you and others have applied it. But it's through, so the only way I could think of taking it seriously is honestly through someone like you and your comrades, because the way the work you've put in, the analysis you've put to it, and the experiences would be the only path for me to want to take it seriously. And which I'm not saying is the right way. I'm just saying is just, but as I'm going back and reading some of your work, I still struggle with how does anarchism get applied? How does anything get done? How does even a revolutionary struggle take place if there's no organized leadership, even if it needs to be checked and democratized and improved in terms of its gender relations, etc.? So I really do struggle with and I'm still there. I honestly don't see. I can't. So let me just ask. How does well, I wanted to ask two separate things. One is how does anarchism inform revolutionary struggle, and then how does anarchism inform the ultimate society that you want to see? In other words, how does a society function under anarchism, black, white, others, and I know there's anarcho-capitalism, anarcho-socialism. There's all these variations, and I keep anyway. So starting with the revolutionary part. So people wanting to engage in revolutionary struggle. How does anarchism improve upon existing revolutionary analyses to get people to be organized and to function in a way that would actually have them assume power?
Right. I think that what's important for me in why I am an anarchist is that it helped me to understand how much of the oppressions we have internalized. That when we talk about empire, when we talk about capitalism, when we talk about male power, it is all in us too. You know, when we talk about what happened to us, kidnapped from Africa, in the bottom of slave ships across the Atlantic Ocean, what happened to us, even bodily, what happened to us, you know? And so in trying to fight out of them oppressions, it can't just be a class analysis. It just can't be a race analysis. It can't even just be a sex analysis. It has to deal with us as human beings, you know, it has to deal with us as human beings who are constantly in search of freedom. So in anarchism, that word freedom or liberty, the different ways they use the word, becomes important. How can I be a part of a engagement with different people that allows me to constantly find myself? If one wants to talk dialectics, even, you know, I want to be involved with something that constantly allows the dialectics of my own personal story to come through in the midst of a collective struggle. Does black nationalism, old black nationalism, do that? No. Marcus Garvey, all them cats, W.B. Du Bois, I don't know if you ever consider yourself a nationalist, but in Nation of Islam, whatever, there's set understandings that are never taken in consideration, that there's a European mindset that you are actually applying these things in, which is why today, you know, it's like even one can be a revolutionary nationalist and be a part of the LGBT community, if I got all them letters right, you know, because you want to be involved totally. You want to be involved totally. The groups that in organizing I have done after coming out of prison always took in consideration that men got so much oppressive shit in them, regardless of class, that if we don't factor in ways of challenging us, then we will continue to perpetuate male chauvinism and all that other shit. There was interview that Donald Cox did years ago. It might have been the late 80s or early 90s, where he made a statement, and I'm all anarchist at this point, but he made, and I don't know what he considered himself, but he made a statement at the end of the interview that what he said, what needs to happen is that men need to be taken out of positions of power. He's talking about in the movement, because he's like, we the ones who be fucking this up because we don't see how deep it is. And we don't see, and I think folks today are more clear on when we talk about intersectionality. They're more clear on the European basis of a lot of our concepts of what's a man, what's a woman, what's the rightful role of this person or that person. Anarchists are like, let's figure this out now, because if we can do it within, there is a chance that the visions we have of a free society can actually come about, and to get specific, then this is my involvement with when it came down to being involved with Earth First folks, animal liberation folks, indigenous folks that are trying to do stuff with the land. I began to understand that everything we do can be undone by the shit that we have internalized from this capitalist, rapist culture. It can undo everything. So the more we understand and processes, there's a chance that we can put things in place to undo them. So let's have more men's groups. Let's have more community gardens. Let's have to get in touch with the land, but to see how we, everything we do is a part of this madness. At the same time that we got these dreams and these tendencies to be free. That's why things can get so messy.
So, man, so one of the reasons I've really struggled, and I honestly don't, I don't discount that my brief stint in the military, the United States military, might have put a lot of this in me to this day. But I think we do need hierarchy, organization. We need to be willing that my concept of freedom does involve some submission to authority and to the will of, and to the community, to the people. So I think I've always thought that in organization, we do need more, we need checks and balances on the ignoble kind of leadership you were critical of, rightfully. I think that's obvious. But I think we do need, so I think about something like a bank expropriation. How does something like that get organized without leadership, organization, willingness to follow orders, willingness to focus on a specific task, to submit yourself to some sort of greater. Anyway, so something even practical like that. Like, how does anarchism? I can't. I'm not getting where. How does? I'm just not getting. I'm not.
And I understand that. And the thing is, it's not that anarchism is against leadership.
Okay.
It's against certain ideas of what leadership has come to mean, has meant, and has come to mean. Bank expropriation, they're going straight. If there's one who's more experienced at it, help us put that together. Does that make you the chairman of the political party? No. That just means that doing for this particular thing here, we know and we trust you. But we're saying we know that consciously. You need to know that consciously. And that we are submitting to, how this is going to go consciously.
So I can't just then get you to make me coffee and do my laundry after that, right?
Not if I don't want to.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Got you. Right on.
so why it becomes important is it's just like in the anarchist circles, you might get something like this. You got a mixed group. And today, when we talk about a mixed group, and I'm still getting used to it, you start off with introducing yourself and give your pronouns. I'm
Right.
still getting used to this stuff, right?
Me too. Me too.
The next thing is we're going to talk about, you know, those who tend to speak a lot. We're going to need you to consciously step back, because, and especially the men, when you take up a lot of space, we're asking you to consciously step back, or someone will remind you that you need to step back because you're taking up time for others who have historically been silenced, which can tend to be women, or can tend to be queer folks, invisibilized like the systems do us. So we're saying if that happens, then we're just going to replicate. And some of the things that backed it up was when you start looking at them liberation struggles in the 60s and 70s that we all were so hyped about. One you will see that the participation of the women during them struggles, especially even the underground, the armed struggles, the women was in all aspects of them struggles. But when they won, the women were put back in their place, right? All of them struggles, you know. And then when you look at the other ones, the Chinese, the Cuban, the Russian Revolution, and all these other ones, man, none of them ended up creating the societies that they first started off, you know, so idealistically wanting. And you have to go into them and study them to say, well, why? And were there others even in during them struggles who were criticizing that, but who were silent? So you never heard their voices, you never seen their writings, you know, never seen the minutes of the meetings where they were silenced. But we know some of the craziness of those men who was in power. So we don't want them same things to happen, you know, and therefore you're looking for examples of folks that were trying to organize differently, or you're going to have to be the ones to be creative enough to come up with different, whether it's rituals or understandings that challenge you to limit your own oppressive ways.
So, but I hear all of everything you just said, I hear brought up in the context of Marxist-Leninism, Nkrumah Tureism, Cabralism, Africana womanism. I mean, I hear versions of that in all these different isms, in all the different radical, you know, as I've passed through these different spaces, African-centered variations of African-centered thought, you know, there, all of those issues are addressed. So I'm still, I'm not clear where anarchism fills that void. And then I'm also not clear where anarchism above or better than or in concert with others supports what I still think is the biggest reason these movements were incomplete, which is coming up against the most powerful state in human history and just not winning yet. So in other words, when I go back and, you know, when we are encouraged to reflect on you know, relatively recent history, the Black liberation movement, et cetera, and so forth, and all that did and did not occur and did not, you know, I feel like before we get to, you know, the nationalism or the patriarchy or it's the state. I mean, it's still this most powerful, crooked ass thing. So it's like, I still wonder, where are we, you know, are we doing a disservice by not revisiting with all that you just said and adding that into whatever various ism we prefer, and then realizing that it, you know, giving us a little bit of and giving your generation in particular a little bit, you know, not a pass per se, but some room to reflect, to say, look, you all did a lot against this most powerful state and it just didn't fully win yet. So instead of fully critiquing and coming off and branching into something new, we and those coming up behind us should revisit what you did and do it again and again and again and again with these improvements in you know, anyway. Please, I don't know if
right. I got,
yeah.
well, here's the thing, and I think I understand you. For example, the times where I do speak. Somebody invite me to speak somewhere. One of the things I will tend to point out, my feeling is that when I look over our period, I'm first to say we lost. We lost. The FBI counterintelligence program and the media and all that other stuff came together, squashed our movements. Ours, Puerto Rican independence movement, the Chicano liberation movements, the sovereignty movements among the indigenous folks, workers, and all this other stuff. They did their job, but a lot of their job was finding our weaknesses, and doing what they do. They know how to put the poison where they need to put it so that we will actually collapse. And many times it looked like we did it through our own hands, So they do. The government, I'm clear that government does what they're supposed to do. I don't criticize them or nothing. The criticism has to come back to us. And even some of the things we learned, even with Mao and stuff, if the revolution fails, it's the fault of the revolutionaries, But in saying that, now the revolutionaries have got to get deeper understandings and also broader, but deeper understanding so that we can get to where did we fuck up? Why did we do this? Who was we not including? You got things coming up today, this Black Radical thing coming up in Atlanta. I'd be more concerned with who's not invited here, who didn't get to show up because of whether it was how it was organized, the language, knowing the cast of characters that's going to be in the leadership, and I know nothing about it, but it's been a pattern, right? So here's the anarchists who are saying, let's make sure that we get our folks at the table. If we talk Black nation, don't act like the LGBT community ain't a part of the Black nation. But are they ever invited? And what does it mean to exclude them? What does it mean for those in our community that's so stuck in that bullshit around, what's a man, what's a woman, sounds like Rush Limbaugh stuff, We got to challenge that. It's a part of our vision about the kind of society we want. Folks are rushing still going into these major urban cities, but anarchists, and you learn this from the anti-civilization anarchists. Do we need skyscrapers? Do we need them skylines like New York City? Can we figure out something else to do with Turtle Island under the leadership of the indigenous folks whose land we on, than to keep building these ultra urban messes, so the visionary stuff still comes in. What does it mean to have folks who keep some I was just reading something with the word fugitivity comes in, and I'm learning this stuff. I'm trying to catch back up, but it's like I don't know whether it falls under the anarchism or Blackness as well, but we continue to seek ways out of this madness, whether it is from how our neighborhoods are organized, or how the structures of these capitalist governments, utilize their resources of repression to keep us down, or how we even deal with the spiritual aspect of our lives. Somehow we have got to confront that we are more than just workers, that we are more than just even people of African descent, ascent. What do we want? How do we envision? And then how does it actually mean on that one-on-one basis and on that broader community basis that can tend to get larger and larger, which is what we want, Why does the ego continue to play a part in our destruction? Why does we're still dealing with folks who keep positioning themselves that they are so smart, that it can only be their analysis, their way of thinking, that we can be free. And it tends to be the men, and like, yo, man, that's got to stop. That has got to stop. That is causing our destruction. Our enemies just know how to play on it, And here we go back into the same thing. Like we're going to start blaming COINTELPRO, modern versions. They're doing what they're supposed to do. What are we doing differently? So if it's still like, even if you're a Marxist Leninist, I mean, it's like every Marxist Leninist is not even about hierarchy. But that analysis, I learned that analysis, there was nothing more powerful. Then I found out that Bakunin, back in Marx days, who translated from the German to the Russian. His criticism of even Marx was like, yo, man, that this leaves some space open here for, hierarchy or some new authority. And then it pans out with Lenin and knucklehead Stalin, like we don't want that. And you see it repeat itself in Africa, Asia, Latin America, those that took them struggles on. The patterns happen. And another oppressive body comes in using the same revolutionary rhetoric, but people are oppressed. Look at South Africa, man. It's a mess,
Yeah, I mean, but and as I was again preparing for this morning, the same questions kept coming back to me. So I read what you said about Bakunin and his critique of Marx, and what you said about the failure of certain revolutions, and even your point here about Stalin. But the first thing I keep thinking of is, yes, the Russian Revolution had a lot of incompleteness to it, but it also was not existing or occurring in a vacuum. They were being attacked by the West. They were being, the revolutions throughout the continent of Africa, the neo-colonial impositions from Europe and the West. In other words, again, I keep coming back to this question of, is it a failure of the particular ism as opposed to just an insufficient level of struggle against a more powerful enemy? That's what I keep getting stuck with. In other words, like I don't think it was the tendency towards hierarchy that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union or the Russian Revolution. I don't think it was patriarchy that was the collapse of any African revolution on the continent of Africa. Sure, those didn't help, but I don't think those were the primary catalysts for the failure. I think it has more to do with, again, the insufficiency of the struggle, the incompleteness of the struggle, the success of the enemy. Anyway, but so just as just because I know we're already at an hour, let me ask this. So feel free, obviously, say whatever you want, but what does, in your vision, this improved world look like? Like, how far have you gotten in your own mind's eye with what the world looks like in a post-successfully revolutionary moment? How do we organize society? How do we produce and redistribute? Because that part I always get stuck at when I do my own fantasy thought experiments about what ism I think would work. And where I get stuck with anarchism, my limited understanding of it is, how do we do that? How do we decide to produce what to produce and distribute what needs to be distributed and care for all the people? And how do we do that under an anarchist arrangement?
Well, I mean, even you're talking about, we're talking about production and all that stuff. You're still talking about the role of workers, but you're also talking about the role of technology, today. One of the things that stood out about the Black Panther Party, which for me was more Eldridge Cleaver, was giving us an understanding of how society itself has changed, the technological development of the society, and how it has changed the role of the workers, as far as that go, and others, where you got machines and computers and everything that can take the place of workers. There's been fundamental changes on all of that. Which is why, on another level that I wouldn't want to get into now, when Huey came out with the thing around intercommunalism, I thought it was brilliant, and still do, because it showed you're taking more into consideration than what was understood before. But So here's my thing with why the anarchism becomes important. You're looking at what you still got to get workers to understand that they have power, that they can shut shit down. Can you get the American workforce to understand that with all the ways that it has been bought off for generations and generations, to understand, like, we can shut it down. We would have to do it in a very multi-racial, cultural, whatever you want to say, when we know that we've gotten backstabbed on that so many times, which makes nationalism for Black folks, revolutionary nationalism, becomes for me more important, because we just can't rely on them people, But there are so many examples of how we can provide for ourselves. Now, and me being a part of the anarchist movement, I have seen everything from community gardens to people doing land projects, and none of it can be on a massive scale, but they give you an idea of what we can do for ourselves. I was a part of the Institute for Social Ecology in Vermont, and sometimes we'll go up there and visit them and watch them. And they would take us, and it was just a class, mostly young white folks who were students, but I would watch them. They would go from inside the classroom to out in the fields and just started identifying all these things we would call weeds for their medicinal uses. But what it would show me, and what I'm trying to say with that is that it showed me that there are people who are just like, we can take care of ourselves on many different levels than to continue to rely on the state and capitalist production facilities or whatever. That we can, whether it's growing food, whether it's alternative medicines, whether it's even spiritualities, that, like, when you find that the traditional churches, even in our communities, are not giving us what we need to free our spirits. There's folks that they're going back to Yoruba practices. They're going back to or try, even some I know who are in their anarchist ways. They're like, even who are Christians, like, but Jesus, this revolutionary, and maybe we can use that to, like, give us a new way of being revolutionary Christians, revolutionary Muslims, because not everyone is satisfied with what is, but it gives you an understanding of how it, if it's transportation, man, I think we need public transportation. We need a mail system. We need libraries. None of that should come under the control of a few groups. And knowing that when it comes to factories and stuff, we in for a battle. If you got any illusions about how that's going to be taken out of the hands of that super rich, we'll be doing this, I can't say forever, because at the way that they're destroying this planet, it may not be that long.
I definitely want to highlight that I fully appreciate, even where I don't understand or maybe not even agree with what I've read and even from you, is that I fully agree with the acknowledgement of the fight that has to happen. And there's and that's why I was saying at the beginning, I am so thoroughly appreciative of you and your comrades for the struggle and the work. And and I'm so, I've admitted, my biases around Daruba in part for that same, work that if anybody's going to get me to sit down and listen to something that I may struggle with, it is people like you. I mean, because if the work is leading to a certain conclusion, or if the analysis, or if the ideas are leading to a certain analysis and conclusion and the determination of action, that's what made me years ago pick up Marx. Because I kept, and this is what I keep arguing with my African-centered family. Because my fundamental argument is always, when Black people pick up Marx, something amazing starts to happen. So I gotta check into it. It's not about loving a white man or Euro. I gotta look when Black people pick it up. So if Black people are gonna pick up anarchism and end up where you are, I gotta look into it. I gotta at least, So anyway, I fully, Listen, let me time check with you. How are you doing? You know, we're an hour in. How are you with time? I know there's a number of questions in the chat. I don't know. Do you want to? Yeah, let me ask it. How are you with time, real quick?
I think I'm okay. And only reason I'm saying that is I woke up this morning. Something is going on. I don't know whether it's a cold or something, but
Okay.
But I mean, I'm open for questions and all
Okay.
all of that. Before we get to them,
Sure.
I want to say also in terms of that, what's going on, what helps me to kind of stay firm in where I'm at is when I see indigenous folks out in the West Midwest areas who are like fighting life and death battles around pipelines and all other things like that. You know, when I see that, it also tells me that people are trying to bring us back to just the basics, like this land, you know, and here's these corporations that's just digging in, you know, and then you got folks who are like doing work along the borders and stuff. Why should there be borders? This anarchist is real strong on that. Get rid of borders, you know, and it's easy to see why that's so fundamental. Well, you keeping Mexicans, who you think all the Mexicans, out, but you took their land too in this conquest that made this empire. So it makes you think, why are there borders? I can't get into Canada to this day because of my convictions 40 something years ago.
Wow.
You know, but all other kind of folks can get in there, you know, and whatnot. All different levels you can begin to envision. And it's just that whether you're anarchist or not, just see how it's not just your locale, but it's on such a broader level, especially when you see struggles going on all around the world where people are fighting so many issues that just like get rid of the systems of oppression. Let's figure it out on a very local basis. But what helps us to like not reproduce the state? And I think that's why I just brought it up there, because when you mentioned the state, we're not talking about a state that's outside of us. We're talking about one that's outside of us and inside of us. And it can only be that way. And if there's nothing that is helping us to deal with the inside part, the inside is just going to keep reproducing and feeding that outside structure. And it's just for me that the anarchist part helps me to see the relevance of breaking away from any ideas of hierarchy on a permanent basis. If there's a leadership, it has to be like temporary. You know, the one with the loudest mouth does not make that person the leader. The one who's the most charismatic does not make that person the leader. Ella Baker, I'm with you. You know, so it's things like that that keeps me in. Everybody, let's be inclusive. Who's being shunned out by us? And let's envision how we would all look together. Why is it so weird that, you know, the folks who are, and I mentioned LGBT community many times because I feel like we are missing so much by how we act towards that community as if they're not our community. So I think that's one of our own personal challenges.
Fair enough. Right on. So okay. So what? So we'll do what I see other platforms do, and we're gonna give initial. We're gonna be very capitalist to give primary. You know, we're gonna give first run to the people who put in the super chat. But I am gonna put in the comment the link to the studio if anybody wants to come and bring up their question on air or via the mic without camera. You're welcome to do that. The link is in the chat as well. Otherwise, I'll come back through in a minute and look for questions that are put in the chat themselves. So Sounds of St. Elsewhere, thank you very much for the super chat. This for you, Ashanti. You have previously written that Frankie Zitz was one of the people that influenced you to consider anarchist politics. Who was Frankie Zitz, and what about anarchism did you learn from him?
Okay, Frankie Zitz, the Harlem office Black Panther Party. When there's a certain point where I was back and forth a lot from Plainfield, New Jersey to Harlem office, and Frankie Zitz was one of the main people at that office, keeping that office open. And another thing about that is, like, even when Garuba and one time I heard Blood talk about the chapters after 71, like there was no more chapters. There was more there was chapters. Chapters were maintaining in some places. That wasn't, part of the Huey P. Newton crew, So Frankie, and I'm trying to bring up some other names, but they ain't coming. Frankie Zitz was an interesting character. Frankie at the time, like when we were doing community work in Harlem, Frankie would have other little literatures that he would put out, be like mimeograph runoff, that old type stuff. And one of them was dealing with Makhno of the Ukraine anarchist movement. I forget, Nestor Makhno or whatever. And Nestor Makhno was this anarchist cat, fighting first fighting local oppressive forces, but also had to end up fighting the Russians, because this movement that he was the leader of, were growing. They were taking over lands. They were developing communal practices. Workers were taking over, their areas of work, which is not no highly urban stuff, but he was clear that he was going to have to battle the Soviet Union, because of that Marxist Leninist hierarchical, we the only ones that can do this, and you're going to follow this path or we're going to wipe you out. And it had to end up battling them. Frankie would put out stuff like that and then connect it to the Communist Party and the United States as a way of saying, just because something is Marxist Leninist don't mean that they're your friends, and I would battle him. Battle brutally. And you see Frankie, you ain't gonna battle him. And Frankie had these thick hands, man, and him and Jamal Joseph was running martial arts training classes and stuff. But I would battle him, on that Marxist Leninist Maoist basis. But it wasn't until prison that I really started to look at him, reading this other anarchist stuff. I'm like, oh, this is what he was talking about. And to read some of the other critiques of the Communist Party USA and their relationship with the Soviet, all that stuff, and how they was not really this revolutionary group, or maybe they were at one point, who knows. But for Frankie, he was like, listen, if we're going to be real about this, just because somebody's Marxist Leninist don't mean they're going to be your friends, And it was from there that it helped me to or encouraged me to start reading more, because it helped me to understand him more. And he was critical of some of the things that was going on in the Harlem chapter, and the Huey, all that stuff too. But it was like I did not see it in the moments that we battled verbally over this stuff, but I saw it later. And then coming out of prison, got to know him more, him and his wife, stuff like that was there till he passed, when he passed in the hospital and stuff and whatnot. And just one thing on the hospital, Frankie's last words, I was the day before he passed, because I didn't make it the day he passed, but I was trying to be there every day. His last words was always, man, y'all got to carry this struggle on. You don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. And it was the same thing with our comrade from the Attica brothers. Oh, Lord. If I get it some other point, I'll let you know. Same thing. He's diabetes got him and stuff, and he's on his last days. Last words, don't give up. don't give up the struggle. Don't give up. And then Breeze, a Panther out of Jersey City, same thing, man. It's like on their dying days, don't give up. But Frankie, I just like, it was not only don't give up, but I began to I had at that point understood him so much, like I knew that I would stay on this path. You know, Jamal Joseph knows him much better, knew him much longer, I should say. And he used to also have these cassettes. We're doing the Panther 21 trial, the Panther 13 trial. He was recording sessions. He was doing news reports. I don't even know who he would give them to, but some of them, which he had gave me, his wife had gave me, but I still have. And I know at some point I got to get them put into something that'll preserve them. But he was that type of person that wanted the information out, you know, and it became really important for him, like, get the information out, and there's other ways to think about things than what we might be normally used to in our approach to analyzing society. I don't even know if he ever called himself an anarchist, but he definitely thought that material was important.
Right on. Thank you very much for that. Thanks for the super chat, Kosuke. Donald Cox is another understated figure in the history of the BPP, especially the split, because he represents the split even within California, Oakland, San Francisco, and LA. Would love to hear more on him. Do you want to say anything more or any more about Cox?
I can't say much more other than he's another one I never met, but would only hear about. And it was at the point where I'm out of prison, and you know, I'm pretty much more doing a lot of work with anarchist folks and APOC, anarchist people of color, and I started putting out my own little zine. So when I came across that interview with him, which had to been late 80s, early 90s, it was at one point, man, where he was during the interview, he was being so critical. It was the first time I read something to somebody, a Panther, that was very critical of the Black Panther Party from within. Which is why I say you FBI do what they do. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to take us down. But what did we do? And he brought up stuff like, you know, how we, in terms of Huey Newton, you just can't blame the FBI for doing what they did to him or whatever happened to him in prison. He said we helped create the Huey P. Newtons. That was a really powerful thing for me to hear, especially me who read a lot of radical psychology. Like, what do we do? And with that, he became one of my, I don't know how he would identify, but just his courage to put the critique out. And I just found his book. I ain't read it yet. You ain't gonna see the whole title because it's dark. Are you familiar with? Oh, yes, you can, maybe.
No, I'm not familiar with that one. I've not read that.
There's two versions. This is when it first came out. His daughter, he gave instructions to his daughter. Here's my stuff. Do something with it. So that was the first version. One of the people that was going to produce the book said, well, you know, that title may not go through too well on this reprint. You may want to change the title. So I think the second version was Making Revolution instead of that title. But as soon as I opened it up, and I haven't even finished yet, it's his style. It's his, like, that is sort of like a freedom style. Like, I'm going to say what I got to say. Like where you got the title for your show, right? I mix what I like. The same thing. He's like, I'm going to say what I got to say. And I'm saying it because it's for you. It's for those of you who still want to follow this, who still want to make this dream happen, who still want to bring this monster down and create the societies we deserve. You got to know. Which is why that's why what you do with Daruba is like, oh my God, I get emotional now, you know, because people need to know People need to know. So Donald Cox is one of them that I think people should read, because he's really laying stuff out. Like, you may not like how this sounds, but it's important for you to know.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, right on. Thank you for that. So listen, we had a couple people come into the studio here to raise questions directly. So Tamara, welcome to the show. Good morning, good afternoon. And what's your comment or question?
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Ball and Mr. Alston. I want to thank you, Alston, for coming on this show. And my question has to deal with guess maybe understanding like anarchism a bit more, because as someone who identifies as a socialist, or more particularly a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, I find it difficult to understand anarchist theory. How do you say? Sorry, theory, because oftentimes the ideas I hear espoused sounds very familiar, because they are also revolutionaries, and they also have their critiques of the state, of empire, and colonization. And so one point I would like to see understand a bit more is this idea or this critique of hierarchy, but in relationship to maybe democratic practices. Because I guess I'd like to know, like, where is there space in anarchist theory, as well as organized actual act of practicing these ideas for a democratic process. And then secondly, could you recommend some literature for people who are unfamiliar to begin understanding maybe the history, maybe key thinkers or even contemporary thinkers that anarchists today find useful to make their critiques?
If I can jump in on that second part, Ashanti, the link in the show description to the Anarchist Library, which has a lot of your work and many others, might satisfy some of that question there. There's a lot there. But yeah, please go ahead.
Right. And plus, I listened to your interview with Andrew. Jared.
Oh, right. Andrewism. Right. Yeah. Right on.
So there's folks.
Cat. Yeah.
Yes, there's new voices out there too. There's Marcus Bay. There's there's all these other folks out there who are being very imaginative, and I'm using that word specifically because I think we forget the role of imagination. That you got to be able to imagine and envision a different world if we want to get to a different world, you know. I think that what's important for me, if I can answer yours, is that what kind of got me when I started researching the anarchist stuff. It would be for one example comes to mind from Nigeria. Nigeria was fighting the British at the time. This may have been the early 1900s, maybe, and it's amongst the Igbo. And there was this thing called the Igbo Women's War, right? So there's all these resistance. There was this resistance against the British, and it took many forms. But there was a certain point where the women felt like the men wasn't doing enough. If anything, they're like, "What's wrong with y'all?" You know. So the women decided we're gonna take the leadership, which sounds very familiar with me today. With all my critique of Black Lives Matter, women, LGBT community taking the lead, right? Why are we upset with that? I don't know. Anyhow, so they started to implement their own resistance against the British. One of the techniques that they used was called sitting on a man. And sitting on a man was literally blocking the way of whether it was their own Igbo collaborators or British officials that was conducting things. They was actually going to physically stop them from coming out of their domiciles. You know, they wasn't going to be able to carry out none of their functions, give their orders to do anything. and it started to grow, and it grew because the women was communicating from one different community to another. They had their ways of communicating, and it stayed amongst them, and it was pretty anti-authoritarian, and it spread. But at a certain point, of course, the British was able to shut it down, but it lasted long enough, and long enough for the example or how that could happen could spread. And then someone writes about it, and then here I come at a certain point, like I read something like, oh, there's examples of people who are able to step forward and have a collective leadership, if I may use that word. It's not so much hierarchy top down, but if someone was good at doing something, but it seemed the collectiveness of it seemed to stay, and then you read these other examples, the Echo movement. I forget what part of Africa, but it's the same thing. So what you want to know is, do we always have to have hierarchy? Do we always have to have the few big brain people? It's like the Nation of Islam would talk about, who's the cat in the Nation of Islam's theology. There's the big head scientist.
Yaqub.
The big head scientist, Yaqub, the big head scientist. Yeah. Do we always have to have them people amongst ourselves, or can we all say that many of us got something to offer, and can a structure be created that allows for that to happen? And yeah, it can, And so you see with indigenous folks, circle, like when they're fighting these Europeans trying to take over Turtle Island. A lot of times when they got to get together, it's in a circle. Everybody has their say. You represent these people, that people. What are we going to do? And it usually has to be a consensus. In other words, you'll hear a lot in the anarchist community, consensus. During the Republican convention, I think maybe around 2000 in Philadelphia, I was a part of that. And the anarchists and others was like, shut it down, let's shut it down. So our crew of anarchist people of color, we're coming over from New York and different places, and the anarchists there was pretty much mostly white, but they had this circle thing with spokes councils. And the spokes councils, it was like an indigenous form of democracy. When we came in, we made our space in the spokes councils, and we was a large contingent. But in coming in, we also are bringing in who we are, and that everybody else has now got to deal with who we are as well, because you didn't hear it from us in the presence that we were, and it made that whole operation more democratic, and making the space for us changed the whole dynamics of that. That again showed me a practical form, amongst others, that our participation can happen in democratic and effective ways. But once there's the consensus, we agree on the process, then we move. The puppets is going to move this way. The people going to shut down that intersection is going to move that way. Yes, somebody's going to lead that. Somebody's going to lead the puppets. But the puppet leader ain't going to be the Huey P. Newton of the movement. The people that's taking down that intersection, they ain't going to be that just because you're good at conducting that like a military strategist. No. You doing what you're doing, and then we back in them democratic circles. It's back there. Everybody's voice is coming in. It's readings that help them things. And I'm sure that your list got some good things. I don't know how to work the technology to even do it. Jared, you're going to have to teach me that later.
All
but
right.
I'm going to be real quick. One of there's a book by Victor Surge. It's called Memoirs of a Revolutionary, Victor Surge. And I wanted to read stuff like him because it deals with some of the dynamics that happens within revolutionary movements that can destroy from within. And there's another one that I'm about to pile up. Undercover agents in the Russian Revolutionary Movement. And this is in one of the social revolutionary parties. I'm reading that because I want to understand, how do the agents get in? There were so many agents in the Black Panther Party and all the different movements. But what was always key is, what, in spite of all that, what are we doing to become better as human beings in these movements? What helps to free us in the process of all of this to become better human beings that can become more effective revolutionaries? And I think that might just separate me from others, because I constantly go with my own stuff. The first time I realized that my sexism was still there, even though verbally I thought I was an anti-sexist ally, was being at some conference, and my partner at the time was sitting on one side, I'm sitting on the other. We didn't come at the same time. But I felt the need to get up and say I'm an anti-sexist ally. No, I said I'm a feminist. That's what it was. And she, from way over on the other side, stood up and said, "You ain't no feminist. You can be an ally, but you ain't no feminist." And I kind of slumped down in my seat. I got about 3 or 4 inches tall. But I understood then that I can't do that, you know. And then there was I'm talking, but I think the reason I'm bringing it up is, like, even I have to realize my own potential to change during this whole thing, and some of it comes by surprise. But once I see it, I got to back up and say, "Oh, I need to work on this. I need to work on that." I may have to challenge my brother over here as we walking down the street and he eyeing other women, you know, making all kind of sexist comments. Say, yo, brother, comrade. That's kind of fucked up. And if anything, I'm like, if you do that, then I got to kind of back up from you. In the course of this struggle against this empire, those kind of things has got to happen, because essentially, and in the end, it will make us stronger. It can't just be the analysis of this large picture. I got to see it from me also. And I think that's what they mean when they talk about bodily stuff now. There's so much body talk now, but I understand it. But the reading becomes essential. But I think it's always best when it happens in community, in organization, with others, where we can constantly help each other, check each other, sometimes in real compassionate ways, and be able to, I guess, increase our own power to actually change this thing. Otherwise, another generation, same thing.
Right on. Tamara, thank you very much for coming through. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Tamara.
Appreciate you. All right, let's see. A couple other folks have jumped in. Freedom, welcome to the program. What is your comment or question? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having Ashanti on again.
Hey, Freedom.
And hey,
that's my one of my comrades there.
Oh, okay, right on.
Yes, sir. In fact, you sparked. You reminded me of the last time I saw you. We was in a conversation trying to build and determine and strategize on how to reach the youth, and the question of LGBTQ came up in that conversation. Over the years, I'll say this so Ashanti can maybe respond to it, just because it's not really a direct question. But over the years, I've observed the LGBTQ community kind of win over the Black left movement in terms of like having space and having equality, sort of equality, and not being marginalized in those particular spaces that I've been in. I've seen that, and I was at a conference some years ago, and it was a referendum on the table, and it was passed to, you know, make sure we, you know, the organization, I don't know if I should speak the organization's name, but that to make sure that the organization in and of itself openly supports and protects LGBTQ communities. And what happened in turn was they put folk in position who are LGBTQ, specifically because they were LGBTQ. And no more than a year or so later, 2 of those particular persons in high positions turned on the organization. I think it speaks to what you were talking about, being qualified for the position. You're the best for that position. But in this case, it was because they were trying to open or give a hand or lend a hand to LGBTQ people. Then secondly, you could possibly respond to what I've experienced myself, and one of our common comrades' experience was being set up by LGBTQ community folk in open spaces to have us, in a sense, bow down or kiss the ring by submitting and not being able to speak that we're not LGBTQ persons, that we do not approve of the behavior, but we completely support anybody who may have that behavior or that title, whatever title we support it. But well, yeah, that's what was said. That's what was said. That's what was told to us in the meeting, that it was a contradiction, and we disagreed on that, because simply being that we don't advocate any, you can't hold a position. Of course, LGBTQ, we don't advocate that you can't be here or any kind of way. In fact, we don't even want to care to know unless you care to share. But the point is, we didn't have the space to even they shut us down. I mean, completely. I mean, it was like there was no democratic process. It was no conversation. And so
I think this is a legit question, Ashanti. I got a similar question in the sense that how do we check for people's politics past the how they self-identify, racially,
right,
ethnically, religiously.
In fact, I tried. I did my best to try to interject Malcolm X's proposal with the religious piece. Leave it at home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't ask, or if the conversation, I could say, as in the meeting Shanti and I was in not long ago, if the conversation is not geared towards that, and someone brings it up and it takes us away from the focus that we were in the meeting for, it becomes an issue. So, but I'm sorry, Jerry. I think you would. I just want to make sure.
I was just co-signing your question. I mean, I get the basis of the question. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Shanti. Go ahead.
Okay, let me. Okay, here's one thing. We have excluded people a long time, within our communities. If you look at the Panther Party in the early days, even if you did with the Panther movie, way back that the Van Peebles did, there was a scene in there where they calling the Panther sisters Pantherettes. Mm-hmm. Panther sisters get together and say, "Yo, we ain't no Pantherettes, we Panthers just like you." I'm sure that there was brothers in there that did not like the voice of the sisters when they did that, and the actions afterwards where they stood up for themselves. There's sisters in the Panther Party tell you, in getting trained in what we call TE, technical information, that it kind of put a little backbone to their demands that brothers treat them with respect, because they also have pistols. You understand? So there was things that we had to get used to, where voices that had been historically silenced or minimalized, now their space come forward. I think it's no different now when we're dealing with our community who are LGBTQ, right? That they have been, they got things that they're not going to allow happen, because they know men in particular, and many times women also, who just can't seem to get over that kind of old nationalist thing that shuts them up or tends to shut them up, so they will be very vigorous. I ain't saying that the way that you're describing they treated you, it was right. I don't need that. Like I say, the way you described it. But I know that they're on the forefront of so many of our struggles. The same way that the lumpen proletariat was at the forefront of many of our struggles, with the way that the Black Panther Party put forward that the lumpen proletariat might be the vanguard of the revolution. I don't see why we can't imagine that the LGBT community and women of our community are going to be in the lead and take the lead. And what does it mean?
Let me jump. That's my point. That's excellent, because that's what I wanted to ask. That's the specific question I was trying to get to, I think. But do you see that now in your and when you enter spaces? Because I've noticed that they have, in a sense, won that struggle in black left radical spaces, not in society in general. I get that. I understand. I know that's a hard thing to do in general, in society in general. But in black left spaces and radical spaces, have you seen that women and LGBTQ are, in a sense, taking the lead over the last maybe 7-8 years or more?
I see that they're trying to take the lead. I see that they're getting a lot of resistance from our community, especially those of us who identify as revolutionary nationalists, Pan-Africanists, and others. And I'm one who would support what they do, because I know that a lot of times it ain't going to be easily accepted. And in saying that, those who have certain reactions sometimes need to step back, say, why am I reacting to that? Why do I have these ready answers for them? I don't care if it was Malcolm X. Malcolm can be wrong. Malcolm was a sexist. What black man or man, period, in this society ain't sexist? What white person ain't racist? We got our shit to deal with. But here's the other thing that I think is so key about our folks who identify as LGBTQ. They are also challenging us to see what it is to be a human being different. That we don't have to be locked into whatever understanding there was in the past, whether it's biblical or whatever, right? They're giving us an opportunity to see that our lives are very multifaceted, with potential coming out of every orifice we got. You know, they're giving us a chance to see that people are people who can give so many different expressions of life from within them, in the struggle and in creating the kind of world we want. We already know that, two women can raise a family who are in an intimate relationship. We know two men can do that. We know that trans folks can carry out the same responsibility as any, what they call the cis men. I'm still getting used to these terms, the cis men. What the hell? You know what I'm saying? We need to break out of it, because a new world is really upon us, happening at the same time that indigenous folks is changing the ways that folks have been dealing with this earth. And it's with their spirituality that Puerto Ricans are fighting for independence. That there's this Aslan that the Chicano folks are, that is still a really inspiring thing for them. There is many things happening that we need to get used to, because it's seismic in terms of climate, earth stuff, and all of the wars and everything else going on. We're in for something, and the only thing that is holding us back, at the same time that the system is doing whatever they need to do to crush us, is internalized stuff that we have not really looked at, and a lot of times are not willing to look at. Be careful how you use Malcolm.
Okay, right on. I take that. I'm agree with you and say that I see the tables turning. Oh, I'm sorry, Jared. One time. I see the table.
Yeah, go ahead. And is this the same Freedom from DC? Is this the same cat I knew in DC?
Yes, my brother.
What's up, man?
Yes, my brother.
Yeah. What's up, man? Okay. I thought I recognized. Yeah.
You know I'm following you, bro. I can't let you slip away too easy, bro.
No, I hear you. I appreciate it. No, it's good to catch up again. Go ahead. But
yes,
I do have a couple
other
people that we got to get on here. So, but go ahead.
Okay.
Freedom. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to say I see the tables turning, being flipped, and I just hope it doesn't go too far. I hope we can balance it out, because I agree with you, Ashanti. We got to balance it out, because I've seen LGBTQ community and women, specifically Black women, go overboard with it in terms of making, and it's a matter of conversation, it's a matter of dialogue, and making sure we balance it out. But let me get out of here, because I appreciate being on with both of y'all.
Right on, Freedom.
Thank you very much for coming through, Freedom.
And just before you put the next, if you're gonna put the next person, let me just say that Freedom and others, get used to it. A new world is upon us. A new world. And if it don't come nice, it's because look at what we did to them. It wasn't nice, but necessary. You roll up into that bank for that expropriation, all them customers online, get on the floor. You're going to be uncomfortable for a minute while we make this withdrawal happen. And if it goes okay, you okay.
Right on, fair enough. Demetrius, welcome to the platform. You got a question or comment? Good to see you. Welcome.
How's it going, Dr. Ball? First of all, thank you so much for having this conversation. Ashanti, it is an honor to be able to speak with you as an elder.
Thank you.
So much from your writings and from your work, and it's just really influenced my own personal philosophy and how I organize as someone who I don't call myself an anarchist anymore, but I'm still very much a anti-authoritarian.
Right
so
on.
just thank you for your work and for your presence. I just wanted to ask a little bit about how do you think about the to me the most pivotal aspect of anarchism that's been a huge influence to me is the theory of the unity of means and ends. I would love to hear you talk about that. And I know that Dr. Ball was asking what exactly is what makes anarchism and that sort of anti-authoritarian perspective so different. For me, it would be the understanding of the unification of means and ends. And I think that when you look at Marxist history, Marxist theory, Marxist praxis, and social organization, that inability to understand those things, to me, is the fatal flaw of Marxism, and why it seems to me that they essentially are trying to use the same methods that this authoritarian capitalist world that we live in is already using, like using hierarchy and the nation state and stuff, but trying to, in my opinion, invert it on its head so that we can get free. It seems like they've always been trying to put out a fire by using fire rather than using water or some other sort of substance to smother it. So to me, that's a fundamental principle that's really opened my mind up in terms of organizing and stuff. And I just wanted to hear what do you think about that sort of theory and principle?
Okay, is this more also around the question of so-called violence, the method of armed struggle and stuff like that?
For all of it, I mean, just even the way that we set up our organizations, choosing to be creating organizations and formations that give people more autonomy rather than having it be a strict top-down hierarchy where all of it. It can be armed struggle. It can just be the way that we choose to organize ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I've tried to answer that, and if I don't, let me know if I'm not getting there. One of the things I like about means and ends with anarchism is why it's important for anarchists how we treat each other. If one wants a democratic society, then there's got to be a democratic practice with the way that you are with other people. Coming out of prison, and when I first started working with anarchist groups like Love and Rage at the time, when I began to see, like, you go there and you see how they operate, it was always very inclusive. It was always introducing yourself. It was always pointing out some of them tendencies we got, whether men or white folk tendencies in mixed groups, that you be mindful of in this setting, and that decision making would be consensus so that everyone's voice would be heard. That kind of practice was also how one envisioned a new society as being, but the practice had to be now. When there was events and there was food prepared and stuff like that. It was always very participatory about how the food was gathered, prepared, and given to people, right? And keeping in mind that, you want to make sure that everyone as possible gets fed. Which was, again, like the kind of society you want. When there was times where someone was arrested, right? And the anarchist was really strong on like, it's an event that there's a possibility of arrest, and people understand it, right? That whenever that happens, if you can't free them in the moment, because there was some folks that was like, let's see if we can kind of get them out of them handcuffs, snatch them away. And if that can happen, then you're going to have a crew that's following them to the jail, right? Folks is already on the or the lawyers and all already in place that's going to follow them. I like that process, that you ain't leaving nobody, on the side and forgotten about while they're in the hands of the captors. That kind of we got each other back-ism was like same thing. It's important that we get each other's back, right? It was teaching me that the world you want is a world where folks are concerned. That the world you want, the material or the materiality of the planet, that ain't nobody going to be cornering up their area and putting everybody at their disposal or their mercy to get some of that from the land. It became very clear that there was those with the anti-civilizationist folks that, again, where the earth becomes very important, but high towers and the skylines, do we really need them? So folks was already going to schools and stuff like, how would we design our living spaces differently, And then you read Colin Ward and other folks that, folks already working on this, but your practice at that time is what's going to determine. So from the defense part, and one reason I asked about the whether it was around the role of violence, some people will say like, well, yeah, but the state is violent. If the state arms of repression, you're going to use the same methods. You're going to use your guns, which is what I thought that might have been going towards. And it's a hard one for people to get, especially, you got the anarchists or pacifists,
Yeah.
But it's like, you understand also that if that aspect is kept communal, and I think Lorenzo Irvin talks about, like the community-based defense, stuff like that. And his readings is really important if one wants a basic understanding of how that can happen from Black perspectives, that it has to be the community. When one says militia, one talks about where the community decides that they need to figure out ways to defend themselves. I've seen some of it in Chiapas, when during the Zapatista struggle, where women unarmed had decided they're going to push these Mexican soldiers out of their community, their liberated territories. And they did it without arms. In other areas, it took the arms of Zapatista, military aspects to run them out. So it happened in different ways. But my experience and what I've learned and what I'm hoping I'm right about is that during the course of struggles where people can get hurt and all this stuff, and you may be in a position where you may have to hurt someone to save someone, what needs to happen that will help you to stay human? Stay human. Guerrilla armies in different places have to do many things, but there's not necessarily things in place to stop you from, like, you got to hurt somebody, you kind of lose a part of yourself. What helps you to stay human? And then things have to be done there. And I think it's back to community, where you're going to be loved, you're going to reflect. You may need stuff for traumatic, syndrome stuff or whatever. But if there's not things in place, you may find yourself becoming that traditional army that just follows orders. You know, love becomes very important, and it's not to be taken as a metaphor or just a good word for anything. Love becomes important. What will help you that love in you? Otherwise, man, it can Palestinians, and then I'll stop. Palestinians and the Irish 800 years been fighting the British. What going the generations is going to help keep them children from being so traumatized that they may not ever come out of it. The only thing they may be good for is armed struggle, resistance, you know, and we don't want that. As much as possible, we can prevent that. Let's do that.
Thank you very much, Demetrius. Thank you, Demetrius. We gotta get to.
I'm sorry, Demetrius. Sorry, I took too long.
No. I appreciate you. Sorry for the rushing, Demetrius, but we got one other person to get to, and then we do have to wrap up. Unfortunately, if that's cool with you, Ashanti, if you go with one more, okay.
Yes.
Kwesi, if you're ready, I'm gonna bring you up now. And you have joined via audio. Greetings to you and welcome.
Greetings. Y'all can hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, I appreciate this. I've been looking forward to it since you announced. I think you mentioned it last week. You were gonna have Brother Ashanti, but I really appreciate you, Brother Ashanti, bringing up Just Another Nigger. I think Dr. Ball, you would really appreciate that book because Cox, he brings up the back history of the Bobby Hutton, Eldridge Cleaver shootout. He talks about some early histories of the Black Liberation Army. He gets into touring with Kwame Ture being more feared than Kwame Ture even. And even talks about, not like you and Deruba have been talking about that split between East Coast and West Coast, but and the FBI wanting to bring that to violence. But he even talks about the actual hits that happened with Sam Napier and other lesser known members of the party that were involved in that. So I think that history that's loaded in that book is critical. But I was thinking too, in terms of black anarchist readings, The Soldier's Story that AK Press put out that chronicles a lot of the writings of Kwesi Balagoon, but then also Sam Mba's African Anarchism, a history of a movement. But the question I really wanted to ask Brother Alston is if you could speak more about the contributions of anarchism to broader struggles. I don't think some people would know that even with AAPRP, the scientific socialism, which is usually associated with Marx and then comes through Nkrumah and Ture, Marx takes that from an anarchist. That term, scientific socialism, first comes from Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. It precedes. Marx borrows that term, appropriates that term after critiquing Proudhon's writing, which brings that term about. So that's one of the things. And then maybe talk about the work that you've done with getting into critical theory and psychology, because part of what I hear Dr. Ball being frustrated with or having questions about is what motivates people to get involved with revolution. And I think there's an idea that maybe discipline is necessary or a vanguard is necessary because people won't move towards it on their own, or there's certain ideas of organization. But then, critical theory and psychology, so much the psych stuff that gets wrapped up in critical theory is investigating, well, the same mechanisms that we assume would lead towards communism also led to fascism. Now, how could you have multiple of these fascist leaders who come out of communist movements and appropriate some of those tactics to get there? Mussolini, Franco, they're involved. So what is it? And it's not just that these workers were duped, because that's often how a lot of it is talked about. The workers were duped. It's the strength of that propaganda which brought them. But people like Anti-Oedipus with Deleuze and Guattari, and then the Frankfurt School, what they're saying is not the workers were duped, but there's a certain desire. There's certain things about culture and a certain attachment to these types of Oedipal figures that drive so much. And if you repeat that, so to even have a position where you could have Huey name himself Supreme Commander, if you have a non-hierarchical organization, nobody can name themselves Supreme Commander one day. You can't wake up and decide. So not even having those structures in place where someone could name themselves that. Things of that. Okay. So critical theory, psychology, how you might be thinking and incorporating those things and talking about how that structures how you've been able to rethink movement organization through some of those different theories and things that you mentioned here and in the Soldier Story interview that you started to study once you were getting into anarchism.
Thank you, Kwesi, for that. I appreciate it. And there's a lot there, obviously.
There's
and
a lot
I just bought I just got the Cox book, by the way. So I'm gonna start reading that. I got it. I just got the Kindle edition now, so I'll start that immediately. Go ahead, Ashanti.
Kwesi, you've said a lot there that I don't even know. I think I need to go into, and I'll keep it short because I'm looking at the time too. But during the time in prison, that was kind of like what made me start to challenge traditional Marxism, Leninism. When I started reading critical theory, Frankfurt School folks, there was Eric Fromm. There was even folks like Marcuse and these other cats. I mean, they seem to have been offering us something different, but I liked how their critique of Marxism was I think it was too it had to be other ways to even see early Marx. I think their thing was like there was things in early Marx, especially you started getting into the radical psychologies that that could help people to be more effective in their terms of their class analysis and their praxis. The psychologies in particular, I mean, the stuff that I was reading, it was the women's radical psychology, but it was also Wilhelm Reich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wilhelm Reich was out of school, and his main book was
Mass Psychology of Fascism.
Mass Psychology of Fascism and Function of the Orgasm. So, Jared, here's me in prison. Function of the Orgasm. I had got these books in. Function of the Orgasm, all this stuff. But what Reich did was different from Freud. Freud and them was all that bougie stuff set in there, just making these analyses with all these privileged people. Reich wanted to be in the working class. He saw revolutionary potential in the psychoanalysis movement that could help working class people deal with their internalized shit, and he wanted to make those kind of that kind of knowledge and some skills helpful for workers, because he was like, why y'all keep staying with these people? Why are you still staying stuck? With the work, the bosses and all this other stuff. And his stuff became really important in the 60s and 70s and in a lot of the radical movements and whatnot, because of the liberatory potential of dealing with sexuality and stuff like that, with dealing with the whole energy thing, and like how your body is just this massive energy, but the culture confines it and shapes it and makes it function in the interest of this capitalist system. And I found that as like just blowing my mind. Just like when I first read Das Kapital, this class, it blew my mind. But now he's like, the ways that our body even is getting colonized becomes important. And in discussions with other people, like I began to see how even myself, I'm very rigid, and how that fit into my little machismo stuff and how I carried myself. And like, can I kind of be different? Can I react different? Can my conversations be different? And then I meet people when I'm sent to Lompoc, California prison. I'm meeting people who are pretty much Reich. It's a Reichian radical group called Tribal Thumb, and they practice same thing, very liberatory in terms of how they are in their bodies, how they relate to people. They want a certain freedom, and it was a part of how they saw capitalism and racism as getting so embodied that you just shut down. You don't even know it. You don't even begin to see as men how our whole thing of being so tough and rough, plays a part. That helped me to understand more about things that we need to do as people to free ourselves during the course of this. And it was different from New Age. New Age was just, oh, I can be this different person, whether on the spiritual or body level, and float around, no connection to the social struggles. Wright wanted to be like, revolution has to happen here and there at the same time, but you need to see how that works out. But that's what helped me and other readings to get the importance of integrating radical psychological analysis into our struggles. That's why the term intersectionality today, I'm like, but that was intersectionality back then. So now you got race analysis, class analysis, psychological analysis, and different things that comes together to show you can't get stuck in just thinking that you can do it all from just this one thing that you're so enthused about, you're so inspired about. You got to be able to open up and be able to see it from many different perspectives, because we are very complicated people, human beings. So not to get so much into that. And again, Kwesi, I appreciate, even his name is Kwesi. Oh my God.
Yeah, Kwesi, yeah.
There's a lot to be done. And Jared, I appreciate this time. I didn't think I was going to last 2 hours.
Oh, I knew we were going to go. I knew that would be easy. I didn't think that would be a problem at all. I'm glad you could do it, and you're welcome back anytime. And Kwesi, I'm going to go back and replay your question. And you know.
Yeah. How do we reach out? How do we get in touch with you, Brother Alston?
I don't know how to put it, Jared. I don't know how to put it in this thing.
If you want me to share, do you want me to share your email with him?
Sure.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yes, do it. But I'm saying this, I can be sometimes pretty bad. I'm working on it all the time to get better at communications. Jared and the rest can tell you, but I do say that I'm working on it.
Kwesi, I hold on, and I will put his email in the private chat for you, and hopefully you can follow up. And like I said, I'm gonna replay your question 10 more times.
Yeah, it felt like a missed point. I felt like William kind of missed that opportunity there when Coco asked about appropriating nationalist things for anarchism. I was like, well, you have even a situation where you have a party that's using scientific socialism, which is an appropriation from anarchism.
I didn't even know that. That's news to me. Well, he got a problem with that.
I'll give you the link. I'll give you the link. I'll definitely give you the link.
So there's a number of things just for me. There's a number of things you said that it's not. We don't have time to get into it. Today. But it's not that I'm unaware of it. It's that I don't know if I agree with your interpretation of what happened there with Proudhon and Marx. But that said, I also, having gone back and read more of Anderson's work, I think what he does in quoting Ashanti is inappropriate. So
there's different ways. Yeah.
There's like I don't
politics of citation.
You're all on the same page.
But yeah.
And then Coco, I saw Coco in the chat a little bit, and when she does confronting contradictions, I think we should all tune in and expect some more discussion from her as well. So, but Kwesi, thank you very much for coming through and raising these questions. Hold on, don't go anywhere. I'm just going to take you off the studio, but don't go anywhere until I give you the email from Ashanti. But Ashanti, first of all, thank you very much for coming through. I really appreciate it. It's long overdue as far as I'm concerned. And I hope at any point you want to come back, you feel like you got something you want to share with us, please just holler at me or Kamal, Kalanji. One of us will make sure you get back on the platform in one way or another, because this has been great. And I look forward to building with you again at some point as well. I really appreciate you just in general and taking the time and coming through. Thank you very much.
Well, I thank you. And nervous as I was again coming on with you, because I really feel like, oh my God, because and I'm gonna say this too, because of what y'all do with this Black Power media. I'm just lately been like, I start playing. I'm like, it's really great. And I think that what you provide for me is what I like to see, because you're giving people space to say what they got to say, even if you disagree, And even when you got to kind of get on them over and over, it's okay if we disagree.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you got to like take somebody and say, yo, it's okay that you don't have to get bent out of shape. It's okay. This is a part of this struggle, you know? So when you do that, and so now it's like I be watching more, I just think that it provides such a way for people to really learn and to really be plugged in, and to get the fact that struggle is internal as well, and it's not a bad thing, you know, when we sit down and do this, but it actually helps us to figure out where we need to go.
Right on. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of that, and again, thank you for coming through. And like I said, I look forward to building with you again, Ashanti Alston. Thank you very much. Take good care, man. Peace to you.
Right.
All right, everybody, man. Look, what can I say? That was dope. That's exactly what I wanted to from this platform, from this show. Much love and appreciation, revolutionary respect, and just everything to Ashanti Alston and his comrades for all that they have done and continue to do to provide us with a path. That said, to those I didn't get to any questions, to those who we didn't get to in terms of questions and comments, I apologize. Please, let's just keep it going. Make sure you do like, share, subscribe, put this in your socials, ring the bell so you don't miss future programs. The conversations, the debates, the exchange will continue on this platform and beyond. So stay tuned. Much more coming on BPM. And here at I Mix What I Like. Thank you all very much, and much love and respect once again. And big thanks to Ashanti also for coming through. And also, I guess I got to shout out Kamau and Kalanji for helping put this together as well, putting me in touch, helping get this together. How much more praise does Kamau or Kalanji need? But if we're going to be honest, no, shout out to them. Much appreciation for them, to them as well. Ear Doctor is going to be around later on this evening. Don't miss that mix for Sundays, his Sundays edition later on. And I don't know what else is happening. So, like I said, make sure the bell is rung. Peace, like Fred Hampton used to say, if you're willing to fight for it. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like and throughout the BPM platform. Thanks, everybody.
I mix what I like, what I like. Everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Well, everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.